What's up, guys? This is going to be a really quick or sort of like a speed painting character design tutorial. So I did like a few of them and then I decided to take one of them further. So originally this was the original. Maybe I put some color on it. Actually, that was the original, and I spent about 30 minutes each, and then I decided to take this one further instead of this guy, because this guy looks kind of good as this. So anyways, so the focus on this one is basically I start off with this one. I'm just looking for the light, and the light coming from the top, and I'm using like a dark value to create a silhouette. So if you're not familiar with making a silhouette, you can draw the line first and then you fill in the negative or you fill in the dark value later within the line, and then I add on top, some indicating some lighting coming from top front, and then adding more detail along with it and a little more highlight for the metal effect, and then using level and then overlay to create maybe some light come hit and stronger light hit on the top part, and the bottom part it just can be pretty much like a subdued lighting. So anyways, well, let's get started here. So I start this canvas with about 5% saturation of green, or maybe you can put it gray, but I like to put a little bit of green and then or blue, or maybe yellow or orange, and about 25% brightness. So it's pretty dark, and then I make another layer on top, transparent, and then I just start trying out some value, and then I decided I'm gonna put some light value. I usually like to put some kind of dark silhouette on top so I know what the shapes are, but some people can just use the light and kind of build up on top of the light, but I like to see the shape first, so I kind of want to make sure that my shape is good enough. But there is so many ways to do different kind of things, so any way that make you comfortable and make your workflow a lot faster or better, then by all means do it. Even if you have to start with a line, then that's okay too. So I start with shape, but I do draw a lot. So to make a good shape, you have to be a really good drawer. If you're not really proficient at drawing, to make a shape is going to be very hard. So as you can see, I'm just making a silhouette of a dude in the sort of a medieval kind of dress, or some kind of a warrior knight. It could be a Chinese dress for because this has a similar leggings basically. It's kind of flare, like those leather skirt would kind of protect you. So I trying to decide on the pose basically here, and now I'm adding trying to think if he should have a helmet. Like at this point I have no idea what I'm going to do. So this is basically the exercise in the morning that I think you guys should do. Just in the morning, just fresh off, you spend about 30 minutes to brush up your tool and trying to see if you can come up with something cool, because in the morning your brain is still fresh, so it's not tiring. Usually, like I would spend in the morning like making comps or making like a really quick sketch, and before I go to bed. And in the midday, I usually will trying to do something a little more that I don't have to deal with the creative idea. I can just stuff that I already work on, so I just work on it, because like when you start painting, it's not a lot of creative involved. It's just a lot of execution of light and shadow basically. So now I got some dude with the horn, and I have the shoulder plate. So at this point, when I see this shape, I already know what his overall shape gonna look like. So I make another layer on top, and I'm picking a lighter color, which is I think is about 22, but the one that I paint on the darker line is, because the background is 25, right? So the darker silhouette is basically probably around 20, and this is about 21, 22, so it's a bit lighter. So when you go really dark and you just use a solid value, you will see a better result of like very little value go along with, like 22, 27, 28. 27 is going to look really light on top. See, like from 22 to 27, it looks a lot different. And especially also when you paint background, the value of the background that you pick is also going to determine how bright your character will be. If you use a dark background, most likely your character will end up being dark. And try to when you paint a character in the beginning, try to limit your value into maybe 30 to 40% range. And this one only about in 10 to 20% range. It's not even the value from, what I mean is the light, the value of light and the value of shadow are not that far apart, and you don't need them to be that far apart to make it effective. So now I'm just adding on more to the armor, and usually I'll limit myself to 30 minutes, but in the beginning, like, it took me years to be able to get comfortable with the 30 minutes. And now I'm start adding some line, and to be able to design on the go without looking at any reference. I've been doing the night armor for a long time, so don't be like, a lot of people feel like it's wrong to use reference or something like that. It's not wrong to use reference. If you don't know what you're doing, the best way is to look for reference. And now I'm using a, what am I doing here? A level to try to get this thing a little more contrast. I merge it down basically, and I make a copy and I move it up. And now I'm using level and see if I can make this guy look better. And I decided it might not be as good because it might be too dark and or too contrast or something. So I decided not to do it, or it basically stay the same level, maybe a little lighter, lighter than the one before. And I decided to stay with that. I put the dark to get make the darkest dark a little bit lighter, so I can have more room, because I can use 20 for the darker, or the darker area of the silhouette. And the silhouette's got a little bit lighter, which means more room for me. And it's still from 20 to maybe probably 30 or 30 something up. And now I'm just adding a little bit more of the leggings and some gauntlet. And like I mentioned, don't be ashamed or don't be scared to use reference. Everybody does use reference. If somebody said, I don't use reference, then good for them. This is a professional field. You need to use reference before you get good. Like, before I be able to do this, I look at tons of reference, maybe thousand when I work on video games, like either for ArenaNet or for Square Enix. You have to look at reference to be able to come up with some design. And when you work in a studio, you will always have like a share folder, so you know what direction you're going in, and then you'll be able to know, okay, are we gonna go with the 1700 sword type armor, or what kind of region of the world are you in, what kind of cultural reference are you referring to when you make the character. So now I'm just adding, so that's all important, they're all relevant. So reference and reference are important. I forgot what I was talking about. So now I'm just using the existing value here and trying to design the face, helmet, mask. I couldn't decide which one should I go with. At first I thought I was going to go with the vertical visor, but now I decided to go with the hole instead. So on the regular helmet, and then I'm using dodge to dodge on the front of the helmet a little bit. And if you don't know what the visor, or how many different type of visor do they have in the certain type of armor, then you're going to be disadvantaged. That's why I say it's okay to look at reference if you don't know that much. Now I'm using dodge and just dodge a little bit over on the part that would get the light. And I usually use dodge, but sparingly. I don't use dodge on any other thing except metal, because metal is really good on dodge. So now I'm just picking the color over there. I'm just trying to sculpt, basically think like a sculpture I'm trying to kind of separate this piece of armor by using light and shadow, and now I'm using shadow to separate the piece of armor out by using where the dark shadow would fall onto the object, and then separating the plate, and I'm going to use light right next to it. So, and over at this point, basically these are more like a really quick design. And why I'm doing this, I usually try to experiment with a bunch of new brush that I make, or new brush that I download from some other people, which I save up so I don't know whose brush it is. And you should have my brush from level 1 folder, so that's going to be a bunch of brush. But experiment with different kind of brush, you know, because a lot of time I don't really know what brush I am using. The majority of it, I'm just kind of switching around with brushes, and sometimes I'll just use default brush. So now I'm just trying to separate out. If you notice, I'm separating out the shoulder guard, the torso, the gauntlet, and then now I'm trying to design what is the torso armor look like, and what is the shoulder armor look like. And at this point, I only care about the big piece, and in a little bit I'm just going to go into detail. So I break the big piece of that shoulder guard down to 2 pieces. So, but on 2 pieces on top of each other, it's basically go on top of the overall shape that I start earlier. So focus on shape and always trying to make them look 3-dimensional. Know where the shapes are going around in the back and where would it end up, which curve would go in the front or which curve would go in the back. And if you're moving the arm forward, which curve would go with the armor. So basically the contour line, right? So this arm's coming a little bit forward, so the contour line would kind of curve up like a upside down U. And if it's go backward, then it will curve the other way. So the contour line, if you want to know what I'm talking about, and you should know because I talk about it a lot on level 1 on the drawing, especially in this month is July, right? So I have the chapter 2 tutorial on drawing figure, on walking. So you should watch that if you don't know what contour line I'm talking about. So just look at those figures that I'm explaining, because everything related. You have to be good at figure to be able to do a character. So on a figure, you're going to see if the leg walking front, then watch which contour line you use to convey that it's coming forward, and which contour line will convey it's going backward. All right, so I'm trying to build something right on its neck, but then I changed my mind because I want to have another different kind of design instead. So at this point, 14 minutes is a long time. 14-15 minutes is a long time. I've come this far. In the beginning, you might not be as fast, but don't worry about the speed. I don't want you to be fast. I want you to be accurate, and I want you to be able to make good-looking stuff first. Once you be able to execute a good-looking, more accurate character, then you can worry about speed. Because a lot of time, a lot of you guys will come and ask me. So now I'm trying to use a texture brush and a contour line together on a horn. A bunch of you like try to ask me how to get faster. It's like you can't get faster. There is no how. You just have to be accurate and be very consistent first. You get very consistent, your work always look good, and you're always accurate in the anatomy blocking or underpainting blocking in shape and all that. Then you're going to slowly develop your method. Once you have your routine going, this is my regular routine. You see a bunch of my tutorials that have stylized stuff that I try to do and make a tutorial of it. Those are not really my cup of tea, but I always trying to learn something new, and I kind of make a tutorial since I'm learning something new, and maybe I just make a tutorial along with it. But you notice that my process on those are a lot slower than when I make these. Maybe because those stylized stuff require a little bit more of a clean edge and precision. Like all of them are clean edges. But if I'm doing a painting style, see, I get rid of the color. If you're doing a painterly style like what I'm doing now, it's slightly different because the edge, not all the edges are clean cut and have to be clean. Some of the edges that I have here, either on the outline or the edge inside the armor or the edge everywhere, all those the clean, cute, stylized one, you can't have this kind of edge, and that's why I'm a lot slower at them, because I'm not used to making them yet. I mean, I can do it, but I'm not going to be fast. But in this style, which is a particular style that I've been working on since the time at ArenaNet, and when I'm working on the trading card, I don't really do this kind of style. Only on the concept art for ArenaNet and for some of the company that I would use this kind of style, because the concept style is pretty quick and very, very conceptual, basically. Unless they really want a lot of detail on a certain part. So now I'm adding introducing another value, which is the lightest one of all. And then I'm just going to use that value and add on to it. So you notice there's not a lot of value. And there's a cool thing when you're trying to make monochromatic painting, because what you learn is that you learn how to create form. And so now I'm trying to create some big metal stud onto the shoulder. So a lot of you ask me, if you're creating a monochromatic, why do you start with monochromatic, or what good is monochromatic or achromatic? The good thing about it is like you solve one problem at a time. So sometimes if you like doing color and a lot more saturated color, then you can just work with color and have light and dark or something like that. But a lot of time, if you see a lot of characters that have a lot more saturated stuff, those are going to be stylized. They're appealing, but they're not going to look super realistic. But if you want a realistic stuff, then a lot of color and a lot of value is going to be a little more like a lot of times the saturation level will be under 50%. If you look at a bunch of screenshots, one of the good way to get better is study screenshot and trying to make a copy of screenshot, or you can do a master study. Screenshot, if you do a lot of them, you notice that a lot of them has a very, very monochromatic nature. Not a lot of screenshots can have a very colorful, because they're focused on the lighting and they're focusing on the composition, basically. So now I'm readjusting the mask a little bit and trying to design. So I'm just gonna shut up now for a little bit, and then have you guys just look at the process, because I'm not sure if like sometimes I explain things too much and get off the topic. I don't know if you like that, but just let me know on a comment, or posting on Patreon, or email me the feedback of how I explain this tutorial. Like, this is how I usually explaining one tutorial. And if you just get this tutorial alone, it's not gonna be good enough. You're gonna have to watch a few more of the conceptual tutorial, especially the beginning one, or the beginning of the character concept. This one's a little more advanced, not advanced, but intermediate for the character concept. So you should already know or have some of my character design tutorial before you get this one, because this one is more like a character design sketch, really fast. So and I know that a lot of you has a lot of my character design tutorial already. So this one is quite a bit different. So it's go a lot quicker and it's a lot more free form. And I don't usually I'll do thumbnail or design it first, but in this one I just go right into it. But it's quick enough because I'm just going to spend about 30 minutes, and I will do like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of these, and then I'll pick one and make it a finalized character. But this is a good way to play around. See, on top of the helmet, I just make some plates, and I'm just picking the value from the character that I established, and then just using the existing value and paint about 100% most of the time. And if I go lower than 100% opacity, that means I am trying to figure out the value. If I kind of know the value or already, then I usually go about 100% opacity. And in this tutorial, you see that I didn't do anything fancy at all. This whole thing, I'm just use normal layer. So this one is a bit different than any other tutorial that I made, because this one is probably the simple or the simplest of all. And I think it will be a good practice for you guys, so you guys are not relying on overlay or anything else as much. So that's why I come up with this tutorial to begin with, and I thought you guys might learn some good things from it. So you don't have to use overlay, you don't have to use anything. You can use overlay after if you want to apply some color onto it, but then you always gonna have to go back to normal layer. So now and you notice once I have the lighting and the shadow a little bit figured out, then at this point I started to add a little more detail of the design of the armor. Basically, I just add like multiple plates on the shoulder. In the beginning, it just have one big shape, and I break that big shape into 3. But first, I got to figure out the big shape first. And now I'm adding the elbow guard right there. So I slowly adding pieces together that would fit into the existing shape, basically. And this is more like a sketching form, like what you do in your sketchbook, that you just do free-form sketch. There's no preliminary or there's no planning. You're just trying to figure out what to go and just enjoy the process and have fun trying to figure out light and shadow. And I want you to do this basically every day and trying to figure out, something good. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be fancy, and it's okay if it looks bad. So I think that the arm is a little bit too long, so I cut it and I paste it on top, and I'm gonna have one of the arm coming a little bit on to the side, and I think I'll add a sword right next to his hand. So if you do this exercise every day, in the beginning you probably won't get something decent, but don't be discouraged. That's what I was gonna say. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You're not gonna be showing everyone what you did every day, so it's okay to have bad ones, because I have tons of bad ones, and sometimes I even post some of the bad ones way back in the day when I posted at conceptart.org. But eventually, if you get better and better, your bad one, it's just gonna be just average of something that looks good to other people, and eventually your bad one is going to look good for other people, and then your best one can look phenomenal if you getting better and better, and eventually you can become really good, right? So now I'm just doing the handle, sword handle, and the hilt, and then I'm just gonna paint the broadsword, not the broadsword, but just a nice sword, kind of like a really thick sword right behind that. So and if you notice, most of the time that I'm making this tutorial, I'm using 100% opacity. But what I do is basically looking for the specific value that are already in the existing value in the character already, and just pick that particular value and just paint on top of on the spot that's supposed to have light. Like, it's not the matter, like a lot of time people will ask me, okay, how to like use the overlay or something like that, how to make them look good. So you have to kind of know where would the light be and where would the shadow be, and just imagine this whole thing as a sculpture of form. So if you look at the overall arm and the shoulder, that spot, and the top of the forehead, like in this area, you notice that those spots hit this spot and that spot hit the light the most. So basically, these are just, if you imagine this like a sphere shape, the light hit there, go into the dark, go into the dark. So basically just think of this whole thing as a form, and then after you get the form, like in the beginning I just start getting the form first, then you start to play with the material or trying to figure out how to make the metal look good or how to make cloth look good. So the metal, like what I'm doing now, metal are basically just, they have a very high specular level. So it's going to be, the dark and the light is going to be very contrast. So if you want to know how to paint metal, just trying to, you know, follow this tutorial here, and also you can Google material study, so you know like how the material, each material have different specular level. So now I'm going back to the background and using dodge about 30% opacity and dodge part of the background, so it would make the character pop up even more. So I just dodge or make the background lighter on the area around his back to create a bit more contrast. Now I go on to the character itself and dodge on the light part, just small spot for the highlight, like super highlight on that light spot to make it look a little more metallic. So yeah, like I said, dodge is very good with the metal, but you can't always rely on dodge. You have to work on normal and be able to paint and assign value onto the right area, and then you will be able to, until then in the final stage, then I use dodge. Like usually I use dodge sparingly. Like I said, I don't try to use them all the time because you have to paint them first. Now once you paint them to a certain point, then you're like, maybe I want to make it a little more stronger, because sometimes when you go pick the color, it might not be as strong as you want. But when you already have the platform to jump off of, like you have the value from light and dark already pretty close to metal, but you just can't get to that point yet, then you can use dodge to push it a little bit more on the highlight, if that makes any sense. So alright, this will almost come to an end. So basically just remember shape first. You can draw first and start using fill in the drawing line with the silhouette, right, with the flat color. And then once you have the flat shape, then you start building form. And once you have the form, trying to separate those big form out into pieces like shoulder, arm, upper arm, lower arm, helmet, and legging or something. Like you have this whole form as a big form, and then you separate each part out. Like, okay, this round shape is going to be helmet, this shape, round cylinder, half cylinder shape is going to be shoulder, and then this shape is going to be the body. And once you separate those form out, then you are going to try to, once you have the big form, and then break down the form into like this whole thing's a big form. Break down forms like head, body, shoulder, arm, forearm. Once you break it down to that section of the body parts, then you break it down further, or you assign material, right? And then once you assign the material, and then you can break it down to smaller piece of, like shoulder will be 2 pieces, and this will be more plates here, some rope or something. So work from big to, and then scale down, and also work from limited color value palette, then kind of expand out. Don't use extreme value like the light to the dark right away. Use a small limited amount of the palette, and you will benefit from it more. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll see you in the next video, or I'll see you around. Thank you for your support.